thank you guys for tuning in. I think it's some much needed dialogue that's probably going to take place here. I want to thank Don Logan and IBCA for allowing us this stage. It's like some of you guys have said, it's probably a long time coming. I think we got a great panel put together of some guys that have been around a little bit and some guys that's kind of new to the game or whatnot. So I think it's a much needed dialogue. Proctor.
Hey, what's up, fellas?
Good to see you, man. We just doing some introductions here. So if you guys don't mind, I'm gonna just call your names out and you can just kind of introduce yourself so it kind of work a little smoothly. I'll just introduce myself first. Coach Henderson, I'm kind of the organizer of this, if you will. I've been at Hoover this is my 12th year, 15th year as a head coach. I was at, I know, right, Z? This is my 15th year as a head coach. I started off at Waterloo West as a head coach. My teaching assignment is, actually, I'm at-risk coordinator. I'm not in the classroom now, which kind of benefits me as coaching, as some of you guys already know. But again, that's me. We can go around chat. Let's start with you, buddy.
Chad Ryan. I was at Des Moines for 13 years, head coach there for 12, first year at Des Moines East. And my team, I'm at rest at Courtney at Des Moines East.
I hear a lot of background.
Hey, do one of you guys mind muting? If you're not talking, could you mute, please? Thank you.
All right, I'll start over. Chad Ryan at Des Moines East, first year, boys basketball coach, was head coach at Des Moines North for 12 years, took a vacation year last year, and now back at it. And my day job's like Courtney, at risk at Des Moines East.
Chad, welcome. Appreciate it. Coach Edwards.
Yeah, my name is Jason Edwards. I'm the head girls basketball coach at Cedar Rapids Jefferson. Been there. This will be my 9th season. I was an assistant at Cedar Rapids, Washington for about 8 or 9 years with Frank Howell on the girls' side. My day job is I'm in the counseling office where I'm responsible for students grade 10 through 12, and we've just shifted our letters, but last names A through HA.
Coach Edwards, welcome. Coach Thornton.
Hey, Willie Thornton here from Valley High School. This is my 26th year at Valley High School. Yes, sir. Was a basketball coach there for 8 years, and then was fortunate enough to join Mr. Charles Anders at Simpson for 5 years. Teach high school phys ed at Valley, so this is my 26th.
Welcome, Coach Thornton. Coach Proctor.
Hey, everybody. How y'all doing, man? It's glad to see everybody. I ain't seen everybody in a while. It's nice to see y'all face. Bill Proctor, out of a things that I do. I'm just a PE teacher right now, but started off coaching at Fort Worth Polytechnic High School as a head girls coach. Then moved to Hoover as an assistant for a while. Moved to East under Sam Powell for a couple years. Then went back to Hoover to help out Coach Henderson, and was at Johnston helping the latest and greatest Bobby Sanquist for a while. And I'm the organizer and creator of Brother to Brother. It's a mentoring program in Des Moines Public Schools, and I'm also an advocate in the community. I do a lot of community stuff, so that's just a little bit of background about me. But I'm at McCombs Middle School teaching PE right now, but I've been in Des Moines for 22 years and used to coach biology, chemistry, and physics at Hoover for 13 years and Southeast Polk for 5. So now I'm PE. But welcome, everybody. It's nice to see you, Chad.
Welcome, Coach Proctor. Coach Carmichael.
Brent Carmichael. It's my first year at East, Waterloo. 2 years, or last 2 years, I've been at Ellsworth Community College up there with Troy Mullenberg. Prior to that, 9 years between Dallas Lutheran down in Dallas, Texas, and Riverdale in Illinois. I'm working at East as the behavior intervention coordinator. So kind of some of the same things everybody else is doing. Again, I'm glad to be here. Courtney and I have known each other for a few years. We're also frat brothers, so it's good to be a part of this program.
Welcome, Carmichael. Z.
Man, first of all, before I even get going, it's just cool to see everybody. I miss this fraternity more than you know because of the new role that I play in my career. But to see, I've interacted with almost everyone on this screen except for Coach Edwards and Coach Carmichael. But Coach Carmichael, I originally started in Waterloo. My family's from Waterloo. My parents are East Waterloo graduates, and I grew up playing in the Gates Park League over there with my cousins and all that stuff there in Waterloo. So I've deep-rooted love for the water hole, which I affectionately call it. and my father was a wrestler, so Mike Anderson and all those guys, former AD and all that stuff there, really good friends of our family. So good luck to you guys moving forward, and Coach Edwards to you as well. Charles Sanders, I've been coaching in some aspect at every level basketball could present, fellas, from little kids to middle school, high school, college, and outside everything but professional. I currently serve as the activities director at Roosevelt High School, but I coached basketball for 28 years and some change. So been around there for a little while. And like I said, this is real cool to see. Courtney, thank you for putting this together. I think it's awesome. And I'm excited to hear people's input on what your experiences are as being coaches in urban areas and coaches of color. So let's have some fun with it. All right, let's grow.
Coach Daly.
Hey guys, my name's Adam Daly. I'm closing in on my 15th year of coaching. I'm a social studies teacher at the Flex Lab at Roosevelt, which is kind of our dropout. So this is my second year as a head coach. Last year I was a rookie at Roosevelt, but I've been coaching basketball and football for 15 years at some level. So I'm excited to just be a part of the group right now.
All right, guys, with that being said, make sure, guys, we're on mute if you're not talking, because you get a lot of background if you don't. We're missing probably I think 3 guys. Coach Cofield from Sioux City West, I think. That's right. I reached out to him. Coach Williams from Cedar Rapids Kennedy. I'm really hoping that he would have time to get on, but whatever reason he didn't make it. And Vance Mosley out of Kingdom Hoops I invited as well. But so we're missing those 3, but we still got a pretty good panel put together, gentlemen. So the purpose of this, beside the obvious, is to continue to put a spotlight on racial equity and equality, guys. Another purpose of this is to have a support system amongst each other, which I think is very, very important. Probably like some of you guys told me, a long time coming. And simply listening call, guys. Voicing and venting some of our experiences and some of our challenges, and letting the state see that, not just us amongst us. Like I said, we're recording this, and hopefully more coaches of more coaches can get to see this and kind of see some of our dialogue and some of the challenges and things that we face and experience. I had a lot through this whole George Floyd thing, as well as the Black Lives Matter. I've had so many of my white friends call me in support of what can we do and what is it like, and I don't know what it's like. And Blast, or should I say Coach Proctor, gave me probably he gave me a perfect example of how to relate that to them without being too radical and too harsh, because all of us know that the approach is everything. In order to get our voices out there and to be heard and some changes take place if need be, we got to have the right approach. And I thought with the example you gave me, Proctor, was so perfect. She said it was kind of like, what is it like being African American in the United States or America or whatnot, and you said it's kind of like being a left-handed person. I was like, wow, that was a perfect way, elegant way of putting it to me, because we're in a right-handed dominant world. What is it, like 90% people in the world are right-handed? And even though you're left-handed, you still have some of those same opportunities as right-handed people, but sometimes it could be a little bit more challenging. Does that make sense? And I just thought that was an elegant way of putting it. Another example I gave to him is all of us, especially African Americans growing up, how many times have you heard that you have to work 2 to 3 times harder as non-African Americans? And when I was coming up and I was younger, that would go in the ear, go in one ear and out the other. And it's kind of like, yeah. We got the same opportunities. I can go to college just like one of my good white friends. I can do this, I can do that. But then when I got older and became a professional, it really, really resonated. And it's really resonating now. But I want to get into our discussion questions, or some of those questions that I sent to you all. And initially, my initial thought with the discussion questions was to have each coach address each question. But I thought, for the sake of time, just kind of open it up, kind of like a town hall or open discussion, so to speak, and you guys just kind of jump in as you feel. Our first question that I sent to you all was, what are some of the challenges of being a minority coach or coaching at an urban school? Anybody want to tackle that for me?
Well, I'll go first. You know, I'm not afraid. You know, being in the inner city schools and growing up in the inner city, and my first experience was out at Southeast Polk High School. My relatives and friends, even Coach Z, actually, the one that got me back into Des Moines. But I, being in a suburban school, and I was the only African American in the whole district. I was the only African American teacher, janitor, in the whole district, and a lot of people, your voice is not very, it's not really heard, and you looked at as more of a placement. What I mean by that, it's like, you know how you have silverware and plates that you don't really eat on, you just sit them out for people to look at, you know, when you come into, you know, your home at the dinner table or dining room table. It was like that. I think I was just there to just make people think that they were really doing something, but my voice was not really heard. But you know, those that know me know that I'm a very vocal person. So um, I'm not gonna talk too much on it, because I'm gonna give somebody else an opportunity to talk. But that's what I felt. I just felt like a placement, like I was just there just to, for people to see me in a white community, but with no value behind it.
Anybody else want to touch on that? What are some of the challenges of being a minority coach or coaching at an urban school?
I think for me, it all depends on my location. You know, I mean, being in Dallas, I think that you found that because there was much more diversity in a larger city, it wasn't as hard to be accepted, or some of the challenges weren't as made. Yep. But I think some of the universal challenge that we have has to deal with, you know, the poverty, or the parents that, you know, may not have the same, what I want to say, direction that you may want to have as far as what you want to do for their children. So I would probably say environmental, in my capacity as a Black coach, has been challenging from what different environments that I was in. Now that I'm in Waterloo, I have to go ahead and get back reacclimated, because of the fact that I'm coming to a smaller city now, but a large and very culturally active city, because Waterloo is very culturally active, even more so than it was in Dallas, to tell you the truth. So I have to get back acclimated to being, you know, in Waterloo, but also dealing with the large population of white folks that don't have that same amount of diversity that you would have in Dallas.
Great point. Great point. Anybody else want to touch on that one?
Yeah, Cord, I'll say something real quick. The fact that the opportunities exist for people of color, that was not common, fellas. I mean, I told you guys I've been around this thing a long time. Coach Mel Green was hired in 1976 in the city of Des Moines for Tech High School. I was the second Black coach hired in the city of Des Moines, and that was 2003 as a head basketball coach and that's the history of boys basketball in the city of Des Moines. Only on the heels of my brother, Coach Thornton, up there, who got hired, I believe, 2 years prior to me. Well, he wasn't at Valley, which I was tremendously proud and, sad to say, surprised as hell. Only because the opportunities did not present themselves in the urban school district, but yet in the suburb, Coach Thornton got an opportunity to go out there and do his thing. So the fact that opportunities are now presenting themselves so that we have this group, but there was a time, fellas, when I first started out in this career, that there wasn't. I mean, when I saw Courtney at Waterloo West, when we were scrimmaging against each other, I was thrilled for that because there were just so few of us. So challenges are, we're not all going to get a job. You're not going to go get a head coaching job in Strawberry Point, Iowa. You've got to do it in these areas right here. And now they're giving us those opportunities to be able to do that. So just opportunity was a challenge for a long time.
Well said, Z. Thank you. Hey, let's move on to the question. Oh, Edwards, you want to get in on it?
Well, I was just going to speak to it from the side from being in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. You know, I always think of it in terms of that word urban. When you say that word urban, you automatically get a certain picture of a place, especially in Iowa, of what you're talking about. 9 times out of 10, I don't know if Cedar Rapids, Iowa is on that urban list. It's still a predominantly white community, even though we are changing in our demographics. And I think when I got the job at Jeff, one of the challenges was realizing that, just like similar to, I'm sure a lot of you, that, you know, you were under a spotlight because in my case, the majority of the students that I work with or the players I work with are going to be white. So that in itself was a challenge in terms of, can I be myself, or do I have to try to tailor some things or try to change some things in order not to be misinterpreted? So it's been a challenge just to become comfortable, even though I've done it for 9 years. Every year, it's just like becoming more and more comfortable with being me and not feeling like if I say something in a certain tone or say something a certain way that it's going to be misinterpreted or misunderstood. It's definitely been a growth process, you know, for myself in terms of being comfortable with who I am in this position.
So you're referring to, did you have to code switch, Coach? Is that what you're referring to? Did you have to code switch, Edwards?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You know, I remember one of my first practices, we had a former player come and observe practice. And I think I used the term chilling at the wing. And she started laughing. And she said, our previous coach would have never said, I need you to go chill at the wing. And it wasn't that I was necessarily, it was just, I was comfortable and I was in my element. And then all of a sudden, and it didn't even dawn on me that I had used a term or a phrase that kids were kind of like, oh, wow, okay, so this is going to be a little different than what we're used to. But again, so then now you end up having to say, okay, now I got to not watch what I say, but maybe I need to make sure that I'm not too comfortable, because you never know who's listening or how it'll be perceived or interpreted.
Beautiful, gentlemen. Beautiful. Next question. This is kind of a tough one, and this is a very, interesting to see how you guys feel about this. Do you think there is some systematic equity or equality issues in Iowa high school basketball or Iowa high school athletics as a whole? If so, what are some of those issues? It's tough. That's a heavy question, gentlemen.
I'll let y'all
want to take a stab.
I can't speak on it.
Hey, I'll speak on it. I know Willie. Go ahead, Willie.
I just wanted to, piggyback on what Charles was saying a little bit earlier about the opportunity. It's all about the opportunity. And I'm just going to take my situation, for example. I was an interim coach, and I was named the interim coach for the second half of the season, which was really, really weird. And then they told me that they were going to open up the job after the season got over with. So I had to prepare myself. So I prepared myself, and I had to fight. So that opportunity was not that was a challenge because there wasn't many of us. There wasn't many of us at all. So it was a challenge that I wanted, and a challenge that I talked to my wife about, and we decided to go with it. And you know, it's all about the opportunity.
Anybody else want to jump on that?
I will for a brief second. Going from Hoover to Johnston, you know, I've told Coach Henderson this. You go in our equipment room, and seriously, coaches, we got probably 10 or 15 boxes of equipment that haven't been opened. I mean, equipment that I don't even know what's in the boxes. And at Hoover, our equipment was some cones and basketballs. And I'm to me, I'm like, here we are at Johnston with equipment that we don't even use. I mean, it is literally still in the boxes. And then at another school, 2 or 3, 4, 5 miles away, you have kids that are scraping and coaches that are scraping to get just cones. Now, how fair and equitable is that? And then some of the kids and people at Johnson are complaining that we don't even have enough equipment. And so that was very eye-opening to me. And I've talked to Coach Henderson about this, and I just don't think that it's fair. You know, in that degree, it's not equal. You know, when you got kids and coaches scraping to get necessities, and you have another group of kids that 2 or 3, 4 minutes away that's got an overwhelming amount of resources and equipment and materials. But go ahead, somebody else could take over. But that's just my 2 cents.
I'm gonna go.
I want to add you in this real quick, okay? Because this is gonna be something that me and you. And I like the fact to tell, because I know you're going to show this, Courtney, that people are going to be able to see this. And so I get an opportunity to pull in Chad. Remember, Chad, do you remember we played a game as Hoover against North? We're at North, and they pulled us in the center court. And the officials literally berating ideal of what he thought the game should go like and what our responsibilities were as a coach and what our kids should be doing. And you remember you looked at me and you said, do you think they're doing that same speech at Waukee or Southeast Polk or Valley? And I said, and my response was, hell no. There's definitely a whistle bias, a racial bias towards our kids, our style of play. I've said it for the longest. I have to prepare my kids when we competed, understanding that bias exists, and we needed to overcome that as well as our opponent. And I'll let Chad go with that. But that was a situation that I know resonated with me and always has all these years when those type of questions are asked about a bias.
Yeah, I mean, first I want to go back to Coach Proctor and say, most definitely being at North and now at East, like the facility differences is night and day when you go to certain places. When I started at North, we had 10 basketballs and 1 set of jerseys, you know, and so like I can understand that with Coach Zanders. Yeah, I still remember that talk, Coach. I mean, we were there, and like the official took like 3 minutes and like kept looking at me and Charles to make sure your kids behave. And like the game hadn't started, and like there was no reason to even have that conversation the way he had that conversation. And so I stayed on purpose to talk to Charles after the officials left, because you know I just, as a white coach coaching black players, I was offended, and so I wanted to get Charles's perspective on that. And like I've known Charles since I was like in 5th, 6th grade, and so I was a little husky, and he was my husky player coach. So
hey,
I just wanted to know so I wanted to know what his thoughts were. And so yeah, it was definitely a frustrating but I mean, coaching, like obviously I'm the East coach now, but coaching at North, and you know, North had a certain stigma, you know, so like I carried a lot of that I don't want to say burden, but I carried a lot of that from game to game, you know, knowing that who we played was going to really represent how the game was called.
You better believe your kids felt that too.
Oh no, we talked about it constantly. You know what I'm saying? We talked about it constantly, and just being prepared, like you said, Charles, like talking to your players and preparing them beforehand on what might happen. And then I guess it's sad if you're already preparing a reaction for something that you're anticipating happening, which just thinking about it right now is crazy.
And that kind of takes me into my next question.
Real quick. Yeah, I just remember, now here's a different perspective on this, because I can remember talking to Charles about, equipment and jerseys and all that kind of stuff. And I can just remember him telling me his situation and me thinking, I don't even have to worry about that. I got 24 new basketballs every stinking year. Now we're on a year-to-year basis on jerseys, so I had to wait 3 years to get jerseys. Or really, they never told me no to really anything that I wanted. So for me to look at it from Charles's perspective, there's a big time gap there, and that shouldn't be.
And that kind of brings me to our next question. What do you feel your most important job in as a minority coach or a coach coaching minority kids? And it's kind of like, I can tell you, for example, here at Hoover, what I found myself doing, overly compensating to teach my kids how to not play into the stereotypes. Does that make sense? Yeah. And it's kind of tough to explain, but it's bigger than basketball, guys, to me. It's about teaching life skills that we used to go over the saying, and I don't like to say it, but my mom used to say, we have to be able to navigate on Martin Luther King Boulevard and Prospect Lane. There's two different sides. You got to be able to navigate on both sides of the tracks. And that was my way of teaching kids by way of basketball how to navigate on both sides of the track. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I'm interested to see what you guys think about that. And I'll ask the question again. What do you feel is the most important job as a minority coach or a coach coaching minority kids? Anybody want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one. This is one of them that I've kind of struggled with as a old white guy coaching mostly African-American students and players, is that, what's my role in terms of just with all of the protests and stuff going on, even this summer, how do I use my platform? I think this is a time where old white guys should probably listen more and talk less. But at the same time, I want to have a voice for my players and for my athletes. And I've struggled with that balance of, how out there do I need to be? But I also don't want to come off as, like I said, I think this is a time for guys like me to listen more and speak less. So I've struggled with the balance of that. I've kind of gotten some flack on both sides. Coach Daly, where are you at on this? Or Coach Daly, this isn't really your moment here. So I've just struggled going back and forth with trying to be out there and trying to be a voice for the guys that I represent, while at the same time, being respectful of the movement and just trying to play my part in all this. So that's an area where I find myself waffling back and forth a lot.
I would say for me, it's preparing our kids. It's just being able to get them prepared for life. Just like you were saying, it's bigger than basketball. And we have to teach life through basketball, but it's preparation, getting them ready, because I know for myself coming up, there were many people that were around me, not just my parents, but that were around me that gave me little tidbits here and there to be able to deal with those issues. Back in the, early 80s, I was dealing, and I'm at UNI, I'm dealing with a lot of it at UNI. But I think we have to take our personal experiences, but yet take those personal experiences and prepare our kids for what might come at them. because we know it, we see it, we live it every day, but we got to get them prepared. And it's just like getting them prepared for practice or prepared for a game. We got to prepare them for life. And one of the things that I do at practice is I kind of have somebody out front with the ball, and then I have the defenders stopping them from getting the basket, and I have people holding up signs, drugs, gangs, employment, so that when you get to that sign, you got to go between your legs, around your back, or whatever, to still try to progress towards that goal. And it's just trying to get them in their world to understand what points I'm trying to get to them. So I think it's preparation for me.
I like that. Anybody else want to chime in?
I think the other perspective that I think the majority of us bring is that we're products of this environment. Like we said, we graduated from some of the high schools that we went back and worked with, or in the communities that we grew up in. So we bring a perspective that's like, we know to a certain extent what kids are going to face as they, grow and try to set goals and get to where they want to be. But sometimes, honestly, I feel like the kid in class that when something happens, everybody turns and looks and goes, okay, what's the black dude going to do? What's the black guy going to say? And I embrace that, but it does get tiresome sometimes. And, and I catch myself at times, I feel like I'm harder on our black players than I am the majority white players, because you know what they're going through, or you feel like what they're going to be up against. And I have, that's again, just that balance that I have where you definitely know that basketball is the platform that we're using to impact young lives. But as we said earlier, because we're in Iowa, it's preparing them for what they're going to see in a predominantly white world that they're going to have to interact with, because the majority of them and us won't be in predominantly black environments. You're going to have to be able to navigate and exist in both worlds. And I think that's what we all try to instill in our players, regardless of the color. And the last thing that I'll say is this: in talking with a lot of my friends, I feel like basketball is the perfect sport to do that, because even historically, I tell people, you can't be really good at basketball if you're not cool with black people. You can't be, because it's one of those sports where, again, it brought people from different racial backgrounds and socioeconomic statuses together, whether it was on the playground or in the gym. If you can hoop, you probably been around some black folks. But just because you've been around us doesn't mean and you're comfortable interacting in and I don't want to say positive, but that's the word that comes away in those deeper ways, and really understanding each other.
Excellent. Guys, I want to make sure we value our time and whatnot. I said an hour or so, so I want to kind of move on. This is another heavy question, and Proctor, I want you to definitely jump in on this one. I'm really interested to see what you'd have to say, because when I thought of these questions, I tried to put myself in people's minds that's outside of my own race, so to speak. And this one definitely came to mind. If you were, being that we're here in Iowa, if you were a white male or female that grew up in a small white town, and the most interaction you've seen or had with African Americans was through social media, TV, and music, how would you perceive African Americans? Did that question make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll go first since you mentioned my name, Coach. Well, you already know that the media.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Blast.
No,
I'm sorry.
hey, you can put me on the spot, man. Hey, I'm good under pressure. Well, the media. The media is ran by the majority of the white population. So so they're gonna perpetuate people the way that they want to. Not saying that it's done intentionally or indirectly or whatever, or directly, but the way that they perpetuate minorities, we all know is degrading to most, and not really reality. But that's what they want people to perceive us as. And I'm not going to go too much into detail because I want other people to be able to speak. But I just don't feel that the way that we portrayed in the media is relative to how we really are and how we really live our lives. That's just a small proportion of it. So you know, being that, you know, I'm married to a white woman and all of her family's from a small town. They had perceptions of me being, only thing they knew about me is I was from Dallas. I was an African American basketball player or athlete from the inner city. And so you can imagine what they thought about me being from a small town, you know. So but when they got to know me and they had conversations with me, all that changed, because you know they actually got to know me instead of seeing what's on the media or on TV or whatnot. So I'll let somebody else take over, but I just think that we need more representation and ownership of our media outlets.
Hey,
because you put your on mute,
with you.
Coach Cofield. Could you get on mute, please? Welcome. But I want to say this, guys. I want to elaborate a little bit on that too. Is that me personally, I don't think we do ourselves any favors by some of the things that we do as African Americans. Like I'll give you an example. It was a fad probably 5 or 6 years ago where we wanted to walk around with our pants sagging. To me, I never got that. And maybe I'm just too old or whatnot, but
no, you ain't.
I didn't understand that. And some of the things that we do in the African American community, I frown upon. I'm gonna touch on a really sensitive subject. Like a lot of guys that I went to school with and grew up with decided that they wanted to have baby after baby with female after female after female. To me, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I can see how some people outside of our race can look at that and be like, well, you guys kind of sitting on your own hands sometime. So I would like to see some of you guys chime in on that. Coach Cofield, welcome.
How everybody doing?
One of the things that came to, I'm sorry, Xanders, you want to go? Okay. That comes to my mind as soon as you asked that question was you look back, you know, when we were coming up and all the Black exploitation that was out there, as far as the movies, as far as, you know, what actors, what they were portraying, you know, and when we were coming up. And I just think that's something that has, you know, graced our community from that point all the way till now, that we have that image of us based on what we're seeing on TV. And it's even worse now because they got Snapchat, you know, Twitter, social media and all of that. So that's how a lot of our young people are living their lives through that. You know, I mean, you think about it, more white people buy rap music than blacks. So it's just the image that you know, we as coaches, we have to combat a lot of stuff that these kids are being affected by because of images and not more so than what they have on the inside. So we have to really try to work on the inside, in my opinion, and combat them, you know, with their pants sagging, because every time I see a kid doing that, I ask them, where did it come from? And it came from prison. And I said, do you know what that means? That you're available. So are you telling me you're available? You know, so that's my answer to them all the time about that. You know, so does it work? Maybe it does sometimes, but sometimes it's not.
Anybody else want to jump on that?
I can talk a little bit about it. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Cool.
Coach,
I think
if you
it's a
don't mind
generation.
Coach, if you don't mind, not to cut you off, introducing yourself, please.
I'm Coco Cofield. I'm Sioux City Westside Boys basketball coach. Been here for about 8 years now. So originally from Atlanta, Georgia, Collegeport, Georgia. So I'm in Sioux City, Iowa. It's a long story how I got here, so I won't go into details about that. But I think it's a generation based on when the pants sagging and stuff like that, because, you know, growing up, you know, a couple years ago, 10 years ago, a decade ago, that wasn't very well known. I mean, walking around with your pants down, your mom would have probably, you know, said something to you about it. And right now, I think the kids are looking at the videos and Also looking at some of the fashion that is going on with the rap stars and also some of the NBA players too as well. So they kind of carrying it over, thinking it's cool to do that. And one of my pet peeves for my kids and for my players, you come in with your pants down, then that let me know that you're not focused, you're not ready, you're not really representing yourself in the community or in the school, or you're not representing yourself as a whole and your family. So that's one of the pet peeves. My players know, don't come in. You come in respectful. You come in with your pants up. Have a belt on. If you don't have a belt, I go get a belt for you. So I think it's just a generation that the new generation just trying to, try to gain some kind of respect, and but also going about it just by off the videos and what they see on TV and stuff like that.
Listen, the last thing I want to address is Black Lives Matter. And here's how I want to address that. From my interpretation of Black Lives Matter is a lot different than most. I think it's a misinterpretation, to be honest, because it's so easy to interpret it that only Black Lives Matter, and that's not what it means, in my opinion. Black Lives Matter to me means that Blacks far too much are getting punished for the same crimes as non-Blacks or non-African Americans at a harsher rate. Does that make sense? So many times I've seen a non-African American smart off at the police officers and walk away from them or whatnot, and they still have their lives. But when African Americans do it, or we do it, I should say, we're losing our lives. But I wish Black Lives Matter was worded a little differently, because to me, it's too easy for people to misinterpret that. But I want to get you guys thought on. But there's one thing I will say where Black Lives lose me on, and not to say that everybody that represents Black Lives Matter is doing this, but they have a reputation from the media anyway of looting and rioting. I do not support that whatsoever. Right. And that is not right. And that should not happen and cannot happen and continue to happen. So I want to get you guys' thoughts on that.
I'll start. First of all, let's don't let the society hijack what Black Lives Matter, the underlining factor for Black Lives Matter. And let's call it what it is. Like, I'm not going to change it because Black lives do matter. I mean, I'm not going, that's what it is. I mean, like, I've always been an anti-racist, and people, especially white people, will come up to me and say, well, don't you think that's kind of harsh? No. And I'm an anti-racist. I'm against racism. I'm not going to change what it is to fit you. That's what it is. I'm anything for racism I'm against, because that's what it is. So Black Lives Matter, that's what it is. That's what it means. Black lives do matter. And I could go on, I could talk forever about Black Lives Matter, but I'm not going to do that. But let's don't let people hijack what that really means or what it really is. My kids' lives matter no matter what you say, no matter what you do. There's a disproportion of I could go on an array of things, loans, education, police brutality, incarceration. That's what it is. Numbers don't lie, but people do. And our people, as far as minorities or African Americans, are being treated unfairly and disproportionately getting the unfair treatment in an array of things in our society. And I can go on, but I'm not going to do that right now. That's for another meeting. But let's just call it what it is. Black lives do matter.
I like to add on that as well. Statistically, 96% of the Black Lives Matter protests were peaceful. That is a proven statistic. It is. I've seen it. I can't even tell you where I got the source from. I want to say it was. I know where it originated in one of our anti-racist meetings that I am with my administration, and that statistic came up. Obviously, we know. And I'm not even going to blame the media, because you're right, Courtney. The opportunists of the individuals that have taken advantage of that situation to riot and loot is just that. It was an opportunist who hijacked the cause. But the majority of it, and like Proctor said, keep our eyes on the prize. The bottom line is Black Lives Matter needs to be said, should be said. It has been said and ignored. And that's what our problem is. when you have a young man who can be shot 7 times in the back walking away, and then I see a video not 2 weeks later where a white guy is jumping out of his van, bucking up to the police, gets in his car, gets out of his car, calls the police every name in the book. I don't know if you guys have seen that feed or not, but if you haven't, look it up on YouTube. And he walks away with his life. That tells me that there's a disproportion in thinking that my skin or people of color skin is looked at as a weapon and therefore is a threat. So therefore, how do they deal with it? To eliminate us, eliminate the threat. They don't see it in otherwise. So if we don't scream Black Lives Matter, not that we discount anybody else, it has never been the message. It's pay attention to the fact that us people of color are being, like Proctor said, persecuted in so many different avenues of the society that somebody has to stand up and scream. And this is the only way that we can get our voice heard, by yelling Black Lives Matter. Then you got to yell it.
Z, it was in the Washington Post, if you wanted to research it, about the 96% of protests.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any statistics, let me know.
This video. I'm sorry, Proctor. This is important for the people who watch this video. 96% of those protests were peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
What I would like to see, I think one of the things that we face, especially with any kind of protest that Black people do, is there's always a way to try to find out the negative behind it. And, in my feelings, as far as like with my team, I'm going to change up. I'm not going to let my kids kneel during the national anthem because that's just a distraction. I would like to do it, in my opinion, do it at a different time, and so that it's not that people can't come and say that you're doing it during the national anthem, that this is the reason you're doing it, and so I would like to do it at a different time to change the narrative, change the discussion, because everyone is using that as the means, and we know it's not the means. So we, in my mind, as Black people, have always had to try to be a step ahead. And in being a step ahead, I would like my guys to maybe take that 2 minute or a minute before the horn rings for the national anthem to take a knee. And then when somebody says, well, why are you doing it then? Because I want you to listen, and I don't want you to change the narrative. Because doing it during the national anthem is changing the narrative. I really like what the brothers in the NFL were doing when they were taking it to the legislators, when they were taking it to the mayor's office, to those places. Those are the places that we really need to go to, because that's where the change has to come from. So in my mind, we can't let the narrative continue. We got to change the narrative.
I would like to chime on that too a little bit too. And I understand, exactly where you guys are coming from. I think we have to educate, those people who don't know exactly what Black Lives Matter means or what we are trying to say. I had one of my coaches, fellow coach, he asked me, he said, I never knew what Black coaches go through. I never knew exactly what's going on, how you guys go about your day, how everything goes about. And he's like, I apologize because, I'm on the outside looking in, and I don't know the frustration or the things that you guys go through on a daily basis and stuff like that in urban schools, dealing with different rules and regulations. And he would just apologize. And I told him, you don't have to apologize. I just want you to be educated on what we do and what we do and what's going on. I mean, Black Lives Matter is a huge statement, and Black lives does matter. But I want you to be educated on why we're doing this and why we're saying that, So I think it's very important that we get to the administrator, the ADs, the superintendent, the board members, and have those conversations that, Black lives do matter and does affect our kids on an everyday basis.
I think the other thing to keep in mind that we're also talking about earlier, I think, with the pants sagging, is that this is a generational thing. How I think now at 47 is different than when I was 18 or 19. And when I was 18 or 19, I'd probably be out there trying to raise Cain and do some crazy stuff like so many of the younger people that are involved in that movement. But now that I'm a little older, I think of things a little differently. So I do think it's important. Again, it also connected, I think, to what we were talking about earlier about how we use this platform to help young people find their voice and understand their place in society. That I did a little bit of research just around Black Lives Matter and around just social justice. And I came across two names, obviously, Martin Luther King Jr., that we all know about, which was nonviolent, and Stokely Carmichael. And the thing that I came across was Martin Luther King Jr. walked right alongside Stokely Carmichael. Stokely Carmichael was a little bit different in his approach than what Martin Luther King. And I think that's the same thing that's playing out now. And then what happens is we focus only on, not all of us, but I think the media tends to focus only on the rioting and the looting and the anger and the way the message is delivered versus the message and saying, you know what, we're tired of this. We're tired of it. And we're not going to take it no more. So I think, again, just understanding those two things, that it is generational and young people express their anger different than those of us who are older.
Right.
And look at all the different colors that are coming together now, though. That's the difference. That's what I like about the movement now, is that there's so many different nationalities and so many different people. And that, to me, is how Martin Luther made change. You know, he made change because he got everyone involved. And I think that's the same thing that I would love to see, and I'd like to see with our young people right now, is that there's a lot of different nationalities that are doing these protests.
I got a question. I'd like to pose real quick. Sorry, Coach. Jump in there.
No, go ahead.
Coach Proctor. I was just going to ask, you know, do you guys see a difference in the Black Lives Matter movement and versus the Black Lives Matter organization, the LLC, the one where you can donate money to? Because I think in a lot of ways, well, I guess I don't know. That's my question. Is there a difference in the movement and the organization? Can I represent the movement but not the organization, or are they mutually exclusive?
I think personally, honestly, I don't think a lot of the people who were protesting know what the Black Lives Matter organization is about.
Right.
Honestly, I mean, I think that they're out there protesting. Some of them are opportunists, of course, and some of them are out there because they seen what happened to George Floyd, you know, and know that that was absolutely wrong.
Right.
But I don't think they know about the Black Lives, and they probably ain't donating to the Black Lives Matter organization. So again, there's another situation where, you know, the message is muffled because we're not understanding, you know, and a lot of people who have come against me as far as talking about Black Lives Matter, they talk about the organization and people who give money to the organization, not the cause. And so I just think that we really have to, again, as Brother Cofield said, education. We got to educate. We got to make people aware of the differences.
Right.
Because we're all against looting. We're all against looting.
Right.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
From my side, you know, my white relatives and white friends and stuff, that a lot of them are against the Black Lives Matter thing because I think when they think of Black Lives Matter, they go right to the organization. Right. I think the Black Lives Matter movement is different. I think Black Lives Matter means we're highlighting the injustice at the hands of law enforcement. Right. We're highlighting, you know, the economic inequalities. And I think the Black Lives Matter, the organization, the LLC, I think that in some ways is going, I don't know as much about the organization, but I feel like in some ways, people who are uneducated about Black Lives Matter as a whole, they get those two confused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's why I think it's so important, like Coach Cofield said, is to educate. You got to take the time to educate yourself. So these kind of mistakes and misinterpretations don't happen. But I hate to cut guys off, man, but I want to get guys out there and value your time. One last thing I want to address is there any suggestions that we can give to IBCA or even the state for that matter to improve equity and equality, racial equity, equality?
I'll go first.
I was approached by Joel Rank, and I'm sure you guys are well aware of what's going on with the T-shirts, and I thought that was an awesome idea. And I don't know where it's at. Bill, you probably could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, real quick before you continue, I don't mean to cut you off, Willie, but I created an organization called Heart on Your Sleeve, and we do a social awareness, and we created these shooting shirts. So if you can get the word out to all of your friends and confidants and coaches, they wanted to do something to kind of bring awareness and have it be like a unified thing with all the coaches and all the basketball teams around Iowa. So if you see something from the Iowa Boys Coaches Association about shooting shirts, we made them pretty cheap. They like $15 each. Don Logan will send you an email with, and it has a diagram of the shirts. They Glidden shirts, dry fit, nice shirts, man. It's got Be the Change on the back. On the front, it's got an outline of the Iowa, the state of Iowa, and it's got these powerful words inside of it. And then it just says on the side, start the conversation. Because, I do a lot of, team meetings and meetings with everybody, and it's just conversation. I mean, a lot of things can get done and be impactful just by sitting down and having conversations with people. So you'll see that coming out pretty soon. So thanks for bringing that up, Willie. I appreciate it. But go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to give you a little insight of where we were, because the email will be coming out pretty soon within the next couple of days.
Nah, you didn't cut me off. I'm glad you did, because I just felt like when he approached me with it and talking about it, what a great way to get the message out. So that's awesome. I'm glad you stepped up, and glad your company is doing that. So that was my suggestion.
Fellas, talk to your principal and ADs, because it's a good thing for high schoolers, man. It's going to be a very powerful thing to see both teams warming up with the same, shooting shirts for something as powerful and as impactful as this. And I think with sports and being able to bring everybody together, music and sports are two main things to bring people together. And I think that we can do something very impactful with those. So.
I mean, you brothers have been in this state of Iowa coaching for many, many, many years, much more than I have. And so you guys may know some things that I don't know, but a suggestion to the IBCA, Courtney, to me, would be get them on this message, get them on this meeting that we're doing right now, because they need to become aware. If they become aware, then we can sit and start the dialogue, because we need to start the dialogue with the people who are going to make the change. I mean, so to me, that's where I think, this group needs to have a meeting with them and sit down and talk to them, and then hear their voices, so we can hear their voice, so that we know what they're feeling, and then we can target our discussion or our workshop or our training with them to where they're going to understand it, because that's how we're going to make a difference, is getting them to buy into what we're going to do.
It's funny that you said that, because I got a quote that I was going to kind of end things with. You guys might have heard it, and I might butcher it, so bear with me. And the quote goes, justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are. It's by Benjamin Franklin. I think at the end of the day, that you hit the nail on the head, Carmichael, that those that's not as affected have got to come to bat with us.
Right.
They have to. If they don't, then there's no change that will take place.
Here's another thing, Courtney, that I think you have to emphasize in your conversations with them. They have to diversify from the top down. That is all the good old boy network we all know. And I'm sorry if I offend somebody, but somebody that knew somebody got them a job so that they could be in that position. Okay. Right. When you look at the all-state coaches, the all-star coaches, and I'm proud of Courtney, because you've been selected on as part of that. But when I was sitting there as a state championship coach at Hoover High School, 26-0, #1 team in the state, I didn't get asked to be any all-star coach for any team throughout the state. Those things need to be recognized. And I understand I was one of very, very few, but at the end of the day, the fact that the conversation never presented itself was quite shocking to me. But I'll go back to my original statement. They need to diversify from the top down so that they have a voice. So somebody's in their ear that says, hey, I understand we're 90%, 99% rural, but we have a population of our cities that have minority representation that have no voice at this table, period. And I'm glad they've invited you to even do this, because maybe you're that individual for us moving forward. But I mean, you know, we can only hope, right? We can only hope. But at the end of the day, we need to have some voice at their table on the regular so that they can get input firsthand.
Well put.
I agree. And just a second, that if they don't know, it's easiest for anybody to just sweep it under the rug. So if they don't want, if they don't have the uncomfortable conversation, it'd be like, okay, I just turn the blind eye to it. I got other things to do. If we bring it to the forefront and be like, listen, this is what we're dealing with. We have to get this under control so everybody as a whole can feel somewhat equal, even playing field or whatever. But if they don't know, then they're just easy to sweep it underneath the table or just blow it off. So they got to have that uncomfortable conversation, period. I believe so.
Hey, Coach, you had your quote on Benjamin Franklin. I said the same thing. My quote is this one: if it doesn't touch you, then it must not exist. They can walk away from this every day, not even understanding remotely what we go through on a day-to-day basis as coaches in our districts, in our schools, in our communities. They don't have to, because it doesn't touch them. So therefore, there can't be any problems. Games are going on, kids are playing, life is great. Nah, they're not hearing the fact that Adam's got 3 kids that don't know where they're going to eat at tomorrow night, or the shoes that they need to be able to play in. They're playing in their buddy's shoes because they can't afford to get shoes. I mean, those are the things that we all dealt with. We deal with in some aspect or another, and I have dealt with. So I'm done with that. I could go all day with this. So I appreciate you guys letting me shout my little truth. So I appreciate you guys.
Well, guys, again, I don't want to rush anybody, but again, I want to just make sure I value you guys' time, man. It's a pleasure. We got to do this more often. That was my next last thing, is that how often would you guys like to do this every other month, or do it at all for that matter? Again,
it's got to be done. It's got to be done.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Well, I'm going to get with some guys, man, and see what we can do. And I'll send out some emails, and maybe we can get together maybe once a month or once every 2 months or whatnot. I don't know, but what that looks like. But just give me a little time, man, and I'll be looking out for emails and things like that, because I think it's very important that we do have this voice and have this stage. And if nothing else, like I said, listening call and being a support system for one another. I really, really appreciate you guys, man. This worked out awesome, a lot better than I thought. I'm sure we're probably going to get more takers here in the coming months as we continue to build.
If it's okay, Courtney, I don't have all of y'all's numbers. Do we have a list or something that
just type it in the chat?
I'll send out a list. You can type it in the chat, but that may take a while. What I'll do is I'll send out everybody's information if that's okay with everybody.
That's cool.
Okay, good.
Okay, I'll send some information out to everybody. Okay. Did anybody have anything else they wanted to add?
Yeah. Hey, Courtney, is there any chance that we, I don't know how we feel or how exclusive we want this to be, but we've got Morgan Schoenberg, we got Nagusi over there with you, our female coaches of color, get them involved with this as well. I mean, they're dealing with the same thing we're doing.
Absolutely. I just wanted to kind of start off small.
Gotcha.
Because I didn't know how things would go. So I didn't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. But yeah, absolutely. I hope we can build on this thing and really, it really takes off.
Yes. Good job, Courtney.
I appreciate my numbers.
Great job, man. I appreciate you guys too.
Awesome job, Courtney.
I appreciate you guys, man. I do.
Hey, thanks,
We
Coach.
appreciate the inclusion.
You guys have a good week, man. And I'll be talking to you guys soon.
All right. Big love, fellas. Good luck to everybody too. All right.
Good luck, everybody.
All right. Stay safe.